Hello again, and welcome to another Red Cloud webinar. My name is Kobe Kushner. I'm a mining analyst here at Red Cloud, and today we're going to be talking about lithium with none other than Steve Hansen, President and CEO of ACME Lithium. Before we get started, why don't I give us a bit of commentary on the lithium market. So China currently accounts for most EV electric vehicle demand, and as we know, this booming EV demand that has skyrocketed lithium chemical prices over the past year, that coupled with extremely tight supplies. This past week, we saw quite a few articles about weaker demand in 2023 because Chinese EV subsidies are expiring shortly. We wouldn't be surprised if demand was indeed lower as a result, but we're not going to call for a sudden sharp correction in lithium chemical prices on the back of this. The fact remains that there's still not enough battery-grade supply to keep up with long-term demand. So we expect OEMs to continue panicking. In the new year, there's also going to be offtake renegotiations. So if we recall earlier this year, there was a move towards formula-based pricing. And so we think the spot market will be a better indicator of contract pricing going forward. And last year also saw cost curves continuing to move up, which may also put upward pressure on pricing. That being said, we recognize that we have become so disconnected from the cost curve as is, and we don't really expect to move back to cost curve-based pricing until adequate supplies hits the market, which for all we know could be a decade away, maybe even longer, considering that the current global lithium reserve balance is expected to be consumed by the mid-2030s. What this means is that we need new discoveries. And if you're familiar with the mining sector, then you're also familiar with the idea that it's the junior explorers that are responsible for most new discoveries. And that's where ACME Lithium comes into play. ACME is searching for brines, hard rock deposits, and clay deposits. And so far, it has a brine discovery under its belt. But ACME is not my story to tell, it's Steve's. So during today's webinar, Steve is going to provide us with an overview and an outlook. And when he's done the presentation, we'll move on to the Q&A session. Just a reminder that you can type your questions into the comment box at any time. As always, we do have to run through the fine print. So during this webinar, forward-looking statements may be made, and I would direct listeners to the forward-looking statements outlined on the company's corporate deck, which we will see in a moment. And for Red Cloud Securities, Inc., I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note that this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigation and seek their own professional advice before investing. Please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures on ACME Lithium. And with that, I will now turn it over to you, Steve.
Hi, Kobe. Thanks for the introduction, and great to be here today. Thanks, everyone, for joining this webinar. As you mentioned, Kobe, it's interesting times here in the battery metals sector, and in particular in lithium. I'm going to give you a sort of broad over on some of the macro themes that we follow at ACME, and then also an overview on our projects, and most importantly, what's upcoming for ACME Lithium. Little lawyer disclaimer here that, as Kobe mentioned, some forward-looking statements may be made in this presentation. So this presentation is on our website, so feel free to reference this when you have a moment. I'm not only the president and CEO of ACME Lithium, I'm the founder of the company as well. I've spent over 30 years in the resource sector, working on 4 continents around the world. I've been CEO of companies, I've been on boards, and I've been an advisor to boards. And, when I founded the company, my belief just over 2 years ago, my belief was we were in the right market. We're going to have a perpetual deficit here for lithium. Growth is going to absolutely continue by some of those factors that Kobe mentioned earlier in the presentation. And in particular, what I've focused on with our portfolio projects, I believe we actually have one of the best portfolios you will find, not just in North America, but globally. They're strategically located in very important regions, and in particular where lithium is currently being extracted and produced. And then I've assembled a small team of competent and capable people that have worked around the world in resource development. So again, the theme here for ACME is we're in the right market, we've got the right address, and we've got the right people to build this business. As you well know, you hear about lithium in the news and you're well aware of it. The numbers continue to get sort of blown out of the water. We're continuing to see massive growth in need and demand. And really it's driven by the EV and hybrid market, but also grid storage and your everyday use of lithium. We take it for granted when we open our cell phones and our laptops and maybe our power tools, but lithium is what is the energy that really drives our day to day. I've heard recently that there's over 3 million individuals on waiting lists for electric vehicles right now globally. So there's an insatiable demand, especially with the prices of petrol these days. We're going to continue to see massive EV growth and hybrid growth over the next few years. So some of the core macro themes that we're following, again, expecting to see 20 times the demand here over the next few decades. Many of the technology companies and auto manufacturers are looking out 5 years, 10 years, 15 years as to where are they going to find lithium. It's now become a crisis in North America. It's become not only an issue of economic security, it's an issue of national security. And we're seeing movements by both the US government and the Canadian government to invest in this sector to ensure that we have a domestic supply. Massive investment is needed. And again, we need to make new discoveries. Benchmark estimates that we need just under 70 new lithium mines to meet demand. And so discoveries need to be made. And hopefully that's going to happen in North America, and ACME will be part of that. I'm going to move forward on a few slides here. One that I wanted to point out in particular, again, this is on our website. You can look at some of these macro themes that we follow. Some of you may not know, but there's 4 countries that produce the majority of the lithium in the world, and that's Chile, Argentina, Australia, and China. And it's hard to believe that supply is really controlled by a unique set of countries. And so it puts places like Europe, the US, and Canada in desperate need. If we have to rely on foreign countries for lithium, there's a potential to have some huge issues. We've been building up the supply chain, building battery factories, investing tens of billions in dollars in these industries, but we need the core commodity to make sure that these industries continue to grow. We've obviously seen a spike in price, and that's really due to this insatiable demand for the commodity and the expected growth that we're going to see here for years to come. There's going to be bumps through this pricing here. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw lithium pull back, but even at slightly lower prices, it makes projects economic, and we're going to see over the long term, certainly by all the independent third parties that I read, we're going to continue to see a very, very strong price for the lithium commodity over the years to come. So I talked about the address of our projects and how important it is. We've assembled this portfolio in a very short period of time. We spent a lot of time doing our homework and research. The first project that I acquired was in Fish Lake Valley. It's in southwestern Nevada. Subsequent followed that up with Clayton Valley, which is really the epicenter of lithium development, or brine development, certainly in the US. And then a series of projects that are in around the only producing lithium mine in Canada called the Tanko mine in southeastern Manitoba. So I truly believe we've got one of the best portfolios you will find out there for lithium exploration and development. So if you think about Nevada, it's a long history of resource development, over 100 years. The Fraser Institute recently called Nevada the #1 mining jurisdiction in the world, not just in the US, but in the world. It's a great place to operate. You can work there 12 months of the year. They've got infrastructure, power, good technical people. And most importantly, it's the only place where lithium is currently produced in the United States by Albemarle, a $38 billion New York Stock Exchange company and one of the largest producers of lithium in the world. They're either #1 and #2, depending upon the year. So again, hard to believe that there's only one place where lithium is currently produced, and it's by Albemarle at the Silver Peak project. Lithium Americas has a world-class project in northern Nevada, and obviously you have a number of battery factories that have been built, including Tesla's, and Panasonic has a battery factory as well. We're neighboring a discovery that was made that's now being run by Schlumberger and Panasonic. So we're in, again, the epicenter for development. We're contiguous to Albemarle. I'm going to move on to the next slide here to show you our Nevada projects. So if you see on the right-hand side, you've got Albemarle Silver Peak project. You'll see that greenish blue color. Those are the brine ponds. They've been producing there continuously from brines since 1966. A lot of companies will say they're a neighbor to Silver Peak, and in fact, and they're 30 miles away. Well, in fact, we are a neighbor. We're contiguous to Silver Peak. And then we have our Fish Lake Valley projects, which are just over the foothills to the west. Very interesting region as well that we have great expectation for in the future. So narrowing down into Clayton Valley, you'll see a close-up here of Albemarle Silver Peak project. We're to the northwest. Albemarle, again, has been continuing to produce there. They're going to double the expansion of this project, over the next year or two. And we've been actively exploring here since for about a year. And I'm going to go over some of the things we've done. We did some geophysics here back in the fall of 2021 that identified some very high-level drill targets. And then in June of this past year, we commenced our phase 1 drill program. Again, we were targeting the same ancient lake bed, the same intervals and lithology that had been producing at Silver Peak for decades. Again, we're contiguous to their project. We're in the same valley here, and we were really excited to get this program started. And in fact, sure enough, we encountered exactly the same lithology that's been producing for decades, an upper ash layer, a lower ash layer. Our target here was to hit the main zone at 1,200 feet. We hit it at 1,180. Brine started to come into the system around 800 feet and then continued to intensify all the way down to the bottom of the hole. So you'll see here by the chart, we started to have grade in around the 275 foot level from our sampling that was done, and then the grade continued to increase all the way down to the bottom of the hole. We had the highest grade at the bottom of the hole. So our view now is there could be even higher grade potentially as we drill deeper. So part of our phase 2 program here is to drill deeper up to 2,000 feet. And hopefully we'll continue to make a discovery and advance this project in a phase 2 program. So very excited about this announcement and discovery hole. It's the first, it's one of the only lithium brine discoveries that have made recently in this region. There are only a handful of brine holes that have been drilled in the US recently, and we were excited to get working on phase 2. So we moved very, very quickly in permitting and procurement and planning. And I'm happy to say that this fall we've received an accepted notice of intent to drill. We have our DMR permits in place. And I received this picture actually this morning from my team who are on site right now. So this is a fresh picture this morning. This is the drill rig. It's a larger rig than we used in phase 1. And this is going to be used for our phase 2 expanded drill program that's going to be taking place over the course of this winter. So part of this phase 2 drill program is we're going to do a wider hole. We're going to twin the discovery hole, and this is going to be a test well. We're going to be able to do a pump test from this hole. Again, it's a 2,000-foot hole rather than 1,400 feet. We'll get brine samples. We're going to better understand pressure, permeability, porosity, different intervals that we can produce from. We're going to understand amount of brine that can be produced, and obviously we're looking to expand the grade as part of that test well. And then we're going to step out and do 3 exploration holes. These were identified in geophysics, and part of that is for us to identify, how wide is this potential resource here? And really this phase 2 program, the goal here is to identify an initial resource. And so with success with these 3 expanded holes, drill core holes, and then this test well, our goal here is to get to an initial resource sometime in 2023. So this is really exciting. This is when for investors, you can get excited about investing in a junior with a low market cap, is when you start drilling. And I'm hoping to have an announcement sometime next week. Again, pending weather and getting set up. If there's no hiccups, we should be commencing to drill here, in the next few days, if not in the next week to 10 days, starting that phase 2 program. Again, very excited about phase 2 and getting this started in Clayton Valley. We continue to look at emerging technology. Direct lithium extraction, you may have heard that name before. Short form is called DLE. Schlumberger and Panasonic have a DLE plant near us. Traditionally, you'll see that brine producers have used massive brine ponds, their evaporation ponds, to extract lithium. And environmentally, they take up more region. In many cases, the period to evaporate those brine ponds can be 2 to 3 years. There's a lot of motivation and investment and science now going into new technology to how can we produce lithium from brine in a more efficient and more environmentally way. So tens of millions of dollars over the last few years have been pouring into DLE technology. There's a number of companies that have developed solutions that are now being used around the globe, whether in pilot plant or in bench scale. Schlumberger, who's our neighbor in Clayton Valley, has developed a technology there in partnership with Panasonic. We believe our brine could be very similar to the brine they're testing. So, we'll continue to dialogue with them. And there's a number of other names here that are working on technology that we'll continue to dialogue with. Our belief here is, assuming we have a resource down the road at Clayton Valley, we will be using a DLE technology as part of our extraction process. So again, those collaborations continue to be in discussion. The first step for us, obviously, is to continue to advance our discovery, get to a resource, and then start actually supplying brine for testing to some of these groups into 2023. So technology is changing the world. I believe absolutely that commercialization here is going to happen by a number of companies, and we're excited about what's happening in the technology front here. If we move over the foothills, not that far to the west, you'll see a region called Fish Lake Valley. And some of you may be aware of a project that's been in development for quite a number of years called Rhyolite Ridge. It's owned by a $1.5 billion company called Ioneer. They're an Australian listed company. This is a world-class project. You'll see here on this map in that lower central area where their resource is located in relation to their claim area. We are directly west. We're contiguous to that claim area. These are our Fish Lake 1 and Fish Lake 2 project areas. A lot more activity happening in Fish Lake in the last few months. In fact, we're seeing geophysics taking place by other companies, some drilling as well. And, we see that there's great potential here in this region for more discoveries. Obviously, you have a world-class discovery not that far away. If you look at the scale here, we are about a mile away, maybe 1.5 miles from their world-class resource. Ioneer signed a offtake agreement this summer with Ford, Panasonic, and Toyota. So again, we've got the right address here. We're advancing exploration. We've done some sampling and looked at historical sampling here. We're seeing lots of hits of 400, 300 ppm, 600 ppm on surface. So, lots of smoke. And obviously there's lithium in the system. And then most recently this fall, we completed some geophysics, and sure enough, we've got some clay targets here that we've identified through geophysics that was completed in the fall. So combining our geochem and sampling and obviously some geophysics, we're just working towards some drill targets here. And I'll be making a drilling decision at Fish Lake sometime in the first quarter of 2023. We've got drilling happening in Clayton Valley, and I'm going to talk about Manitoba next because we've got a winter drill program upcoming. So I'm holding back on Fish Lake a little bit. To have three drill programs going on at once would be a challenge for a company like us, but we believe that Fish Lake has lots of potential and we'll continue to evaluate over time. Ultimately, we'd like to seek a joint venture partner as well. That's certainly something that we could do to advance that program faster. Why I focused on Manitoba? There's obviously some great lithium projects throughout Canada, in Quebec, in Ontario. But the only place where lithium actually is produced in Canada is in southeastern Manitoba. and it's at the Tanko mine. These are massive pegmatite fields throughout this region. Sinomine, a large company, bought the Tanko mine a number of years ago. It's been off and on in production since 1969. They've sent permits into the government to expand operations here. They're putting ore into large bags, putting it on rail cars, sending it across Canada, putting it in freighters in Vancouver, and then shipping it to China. That's what's happening right now from production that's taking place at Tanko mine. So if you think about battery factories now being built in Ontario by Stellantis in Western Ontario, the battery factory being built near Kingston in Eastern Ontario, look about where the U.S. border is in relation to this region. This is well located near Ontario and the U.S. border for infrastructure and ultimately end suppliers. So, we're really excited about what's happening in Manitoba. There's a number of other juniors in the region, and I truly believe there's going to be a number of discoveries made in this region over time. This map here shows our Shatford Lake claim area. The Tanko mine is in the upper central area. That's where Sinomine is currently producing what are called LCTs, lithium, cesium, and tantalum. We actually are contiguous to their mineral leases. We are the largest landholder to the south of the Tanko mine. I expanded that area and added some new claims this past summer called our Burst Lake area. And so we've got a very large footprint here with great potential here. We're actually about 1.5 kilometers from the Tanko mine that's in production. We've had a busy summer. We worked on some geophysics, some sampling, some mapping, some structural work, and we're getting set for an upcoming drill program. This is another project in Manitoba. We're about 18 kilometers north, called our Cat-Euclid Lake claims. We've done work here as well, and it's going to be part of a phase 2 drill program down the road. Highly prospective. MRL, one of the largest Australian lithium companies, has recently invested in the region, and we're excited to advance this project. So if we move ahead to what's upcoming here in Manitoba, as I mentioned, we completed geophysics this fall. We've identified numerous targets throughout this Shatford Lake region, Burst Lake region. There's pegmatites that were known in this area. We've identified new pegmatites in this region, and we submitted our permits for a drill program in early fall. I talked to the Manitoba government yesterday, and I'm expecting to get the green light on our drill permit here in the next few days. At least that's what they're telling me. So hoping that that's going to happen. And we have crews and technical people and all the procurement ready to go to start a winter drill program here in Manitoba. We've identified priority 1, 2, and 3 drill targets. We've put them in for permitting. Part of our phase 1 will be drilling priority 1 targets and possibly some priority 2 targets. So this program is imminent. Once we get the green light on permitting, we'll quickly move to planning and execution and mobilization. And I'll have further announcements here on commencement of a winter drill program here in Manitoba. So really exciting time for ACME. We're obviously starting our brine phase 2 program here in Clayton Valley, Nevada in the next week or so. And then my expectations is we should be starting here in Manitoba and have the drills turning here sometime in early winter, based on our ability to move here and start program. But we'll have boots on the ground in Manitoba in the next couple of weeks. I'm actually flying to Winnipeg next week as part of that planning process. And again, excited to get working here. We signed an agreement with Saugeen First Nation back in the fall. We're working in collaboration with them. In fact, one of my meetings next week in Manitoba is with Council. Chief Henderson has invited me to speak there. There's a holiday celebration going on, and I'm going to participate in that sometime next week. So we continue to employ members of the Saugeen First Nation, and we want to continue to make sure that we're good stewards of this region and making sure that we are doing everything with best practices. We've recently completed an archaeological study. There's a number of things that you have to do as part of the permit process. All those are complete now, and we're getting excited to get get working here for our winter drill program in Manitoba. As mentioned, I've got 30 years in the resource sector. I've worked with majors. I sold a company to Ivanhoe Mines a number of years ago and worked out of Ivanhoe's offices for a couple of years. Rio Tinto Kennecott is running the last copper gold project that I worked on. I've worked in Latin America, I've worked in Asia, I've worked in Africa, and I've certainly worked in Mexico, US, and Canada on projects. My background is mainly in M&A, in finance, in corporate development. And so what I've been able to do is surround myself with some very, very good technical people. Yanis Titsos on my board was with BHP for 19 years. He's been involved in over 200 transactions. Bill Firebend is a lithium expert and geologist based out of Arizona and Nevada, and has been working in lithium for the past decade. Matt Banta, a hydrogeologist, works out of Reno and probably is the top hydrogeologist in Nevada when it comes to understanding brine. He's been very important to us in having success in Clayton Valley. And then Paul McQuiggan has been overseeing a lot of our work in Manitoba. He's a sampling expert. A lot of the sampling methodology used by geologists today were some of the work that he created earlier in his career. He's worked on all 4 continents and is a very good technical advisor to me. These are just some of the people that are part of our group. We've got a great technical team in advancing our projects and de-risking them over time. So really, the key here from an investment standpoint is the macro theme continues to look very, very good. This is probably the most exciting time to be part of a lithium company. We've spent the last few months preparing and planning, working on permits, procurement, strategizing, working towards this exact moment. And, when you think about where do you want to be positioned as an investor, you want to be positioned, upon the discovery stage and ultimately, the stage when a company has a resource. And so that's where we're at right now. We're about to drill in Clayton Valley. We're about to drill in Manitoba. And we're going to have some key catalysts, hopefully, upcoming here in 2023. This is going to be a milestone year for us. And we're really excited to get started here after all the hard work that my team has put in. And then we're well financed. We're backed by Wartaw Capital's Electrification and Decarbonization Fund. They're our largest shareholder. They've invested in us twice. Lithium Royalty is a supporter of ours and an active investor. They've invested in us in 2 of our financings. A number of institutions that Red Cloud has introduced us to have invested as well. At the end of June, we had about $12 million in the bank. We're just under $10 million today. So I have enough capital to drill in Clayton Valley as part of this phase 2 program. And I certainly have enough capital to drill our winter program in Manitoba. And then I have cash left over after that to continue to advance the company. So we have running room. We're in good shape right now. And we're really excited to get started. And I think now is the time, certainly for investors, to consider us as a lithium company. 2023 is really going to be a milestone year for us. And we're hoping we're going to have success with the drill bit. We're listed on the CSE, and we were upgraded to the QX on OTC this past summer, highest level of OTC markets. And I really am pleased that you all were able to make it today. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any further questions. I'll take a few questions today. And again, Kobe, thanks for introducing me and allowing me to share this presentation. I've kept it fairly general. And again, if anybody has any more specific questions they have offline, I'm happy to answer them and jump on a call with shareholders or potential investors.
Great. Well, thank you, Steve, for another very informative presentation. And as you alluded to, we'll now start with the Q&A portion of this webinar. So just a reminder to everyone on the line that you could type your questions into the chat box at any time. And if you see my eyes wandering up there, it's because I have my questions up there. So we do have some questions right now. But as usual, I like to start from the top and kind of work my way down. So, you mentioned that it was about 2 years ago that you realized that there was a big opportunity in lithium. So what made you realize that there was this opportunity? Was there a specific moment, perhaps you read an article about OEMs committing to getting rid of gas-powered cars, or maybe it was the government deeming lithium a critical mineral? Was there a special moment?
Well, my DNA, is really, I think, like an investor, and I've invested in probably 300 to 400 projects over the course of my career as well. In fact, I had a money management firm a number of years ago. So not only have I started resource companies, I've been an active investor, and I invested in an Argentina lithium company about 12 years ago, and then I invested in a company called Western Lithium, which owned a project called Thacker Pass, which is now owned by Lithium Americas. In fact, my office was just down the hall from Western Lithium about 10 years ago, when lithium was not really on the radar for the general investor public. So I have been following lithium for over a decade. I don't think at that time I recognized what the potential was. But that really was starting to come clear to me. And in reading independent groups like Benchmark, Fast Markets, investment banking reports, analyst reports, leading up to a couple years ago, the market had kind of a bull lithium market for a period of time, and then it went soft back, if you recall, in kind of 2019 and 20. And I guess it was that inflection point where I felt that there was an opportunity to maybe put together a portfolio during that sort of short period of weakness or softness in the market. It wasn't a question of me market timing. It's just everything was suggesting to me that we were going to be in this massive mega trend. I didn't truly understand the crisis that we were going to be facing here in North America and Europe, to be honest with you. And that's really become evident to me over the last year and a half since I founded the company. I think this sector, and we see cyclical things happening in other commodities, but I absolutely believe that from a battery metal standpoint that this is just the tip of the iceberg. I think we're going to be in a massive mega trend here. We're in chapter 2 of a very long book, and we're well positioned at ACME. I'm really excited. I'm as excited as I've ever been in my career about projects and about this sector. And my goal here is to work for the shareholders, continue to de-risk these projects, and hopefully what's below the ground is of world-class caliber.
Yeah, awesome. So you mentioned you've been following the lithium space, give or take, for 10 years. So you understand by now that the North American supply chain is still very much being developed compared to, say, China. So what kind of developments do you envision for 2023, or at least in the near term, whether that's in Canada or the US?
Well, even though you see a lot of exploration going on, the question will be is how many companies will be turned into a mine. And I think that the bottleneck from a supply chain standpoint is going to be in permitting at the end of the line. And I've said that in panels and in discussions that I think we'll continue to see capital flowing into this industry. I think there are some very good projects in North America, and we're now hearing the right things coming out of the federal governments in Canada and the US. Obviously, Biden invoking the Defense Production Act, the white paper that the Energy Department put out on the blueprint for lithium. All these are important things. We need more human capital on the permitting side. We need to shorten these roads, to permitting. And I'm not saying that we need to shortchange the permitting process. ESG is very important. If there's 100 boxes that need to be ticked to permit a mine, well, we need to make sure all those are ticked. But human capital needs to be put into it, and resources need to be put in it to make sure that we have dozens, if not hundreds, of people that are in the permitting office. I spoke in Manitoba at Manitoba's version of PDAC a couple weeks ago. The Minister of Mines in Manitoba was the keynote speaker, and he announced that 19 new people were being hired in Manitoba to work in their minerals division, and in particular in permitting. And so Manitoba recognizes that we need more people in these departments to ensure that companies like us can move along in an appropriate manner through all the various processes. I've found that as an exploration company that permitting actually hasn't been too bad for us. If you need a drill permit, we know what we're doing, so we're efficient in it. This isn't our first rodeo. So in Nevada and Manitoba, we've been fortunate that we've been able to move fairly quickly. The stage where you get to actually where you put a shovel in the ground, that's really where you need lots of bodies. And again, we're continuing to see good good movement in that area, and hopefully that will improve over time.
Right. Okay, so let's kind of move on to the projects now. So one question that we have is someone's wondering about, your First Nations relationships, and they're also wondering about infrastructure across each of your projects. So, how easy are each of your projects to access?
Well, I mean, the good news about where we're located, and part of the reasons why I put this portfolio together, is we're near existing mines. We're not going into deep into the Arctic or into a jungle or where there's no infrastructure. I mean, I think there are some great projects out there, world-class projects that need infrastructure, and my guess is a lot of that infrastructure will be built. The prospectivity certainly is still very good, but one of the advantages we have in Clayton Valley and in Manitoba is we're near infrastructure. At Clayton Valley, we already have Silver Peak and Albemarle's infrastructure there. We've got power. There's roads. If you need a wrench, you can go to Home Depot. Our teams sleep in hotels or even in their own beds at night. You don't have to build camps. There's road. You don't have to build roads and bridges and some of the infrastructure that's needed. There's a long history in Nevada of mining. The community, everyone has relatives in the mining community. Their fathers or grandparents or mothers or aunts or cousins are in the mining industry in Nevada, and certainly the region in and around Clayton Valley. There's historical mines in the region. There's no community issues that we have to date. There are no First Nations issues in our region. So in Nevada, we're very well positioned. And again, it's been named the #1 mining jurisdiction in the world by the Fraser Institute recently. In Manitoba, with the Tanko mine being already there, it has huge advantages. The power lines that go to the Tanko mine go right through our Shatford Lake project. It crosses right across the middle and heart of our Shatford Lake project that goes to the Tanko mine. There's a main road that goes to the Tanko mine. And we've got a main highway here. I can get to our project. We're about a 70-minute drive to the entrance of our land claims from Winnipeg. So access to international airports, access to helicopters, trucks, equipment, and then most importantly, access to market is really important. We border some of the biggest potential markets in the supply chain in the world. Southeastern Manitoba and Nevada we're near battery factories. You're not having to ship lithium overseas or across continents. You're right there. So from an infrastructure standpoint, these projects are very, very well located.
Great. Okay, so on to the drill results. A few months back, you made a lithium brine discovery. So congrats on that. How do your grades compare to your neighbor?
Yeah, so if you look at the highest grade at the bottom of the hole, we were about 130 ppm. If you look at Albemarle, I looked at recently at Albemarle's MD&A and their reserve report, and it's running in the mid 90s. Schlumberger and Panasonic, from what I'm hearing, is they're testing grade that's in the 95 to 150 ppm range through their pilot plants. So we are in the grade where it's similar to what we would expect in this region. At this grade level, we hopefully will have higher grade. The highest grade, it was increasing towards the bottom of the hole. We're hoping to possibly have higher grade as we drill down to 2,000 feet. At this grade, DLE is going to be appropriate for us in reducing CapEx, reducing OpEx, and ensuring that we have high recovery. But all that testing metallurgically and the economics will have to be determined in the future. The first step here is to develop to expand our discovery and hopefully get to a resource. But again, we're similar grade within this regional area.
Okay, and this next question, I'm not sure if you can actually answer here, but Albemarle is a $30 billion market cap company. They're right next door to your discovery, and then you also have players like Panasonic and Schlumberger also next door. So Have any of these groups come knocking at your door after you made this discovery?
I think the key here is we've had dialogue with lots of different companies. We know Schlumberger and Pure Energy is the ground that actually Schlumberger and Panasonic are working on, and I know the CEO of Pure Energy very well. We know people at Schlumberger. We follow that pilot plant very closely. I think they really want to test the brine that's there and get it through the pilot plant and see how that works. They do know us. They follow us. They're interested in expanding their scope with this new technology over time, because we're a neighbor. And my belief is that our brine is going to be very similar to theirs. I mean, that's our expectation. We'll have to still test it to see, but they would be an appropriate partner for us to test our brine with in their pilot plant. Albemarle is the we're David and Goliath here. I know that they're watching us closely as to what we're doing. I think the key for me is to advance this program, hopefully continue to make discovery through the drill bit, and get to a resource calculation. I think that's when a company like Albemarle will take notice. That's the key for me, is to advance our discovery and development here, and then hopefully down the road there's some of those talks can take place.
Okay, now you're planning on drilling more holes here, of course, very shortly, but you're also planning on testing the reservoir and doing some pump testing. So, what kind of results are you hoping to see in terms of, either things within the brine itself or within, flow rates or permeability? What kind of results are you looking for?
I'm hesitant to give out some numbers, just because we don't know at this time. We're seeing from a lithology standpoint, from areas where we could produce everything. We did downhole geophysics as well when we drilled that first core hole. Everything suggests that we're in the right zone. I'm hesitant to talk about flow rates or potential there. My preference is to get this program started and be able to share that down the road. But
okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
So let's move over to Manitoba now. First off, we have a question just concerning strategy. So, of course, what you're looking for in Manitoba, not only is it geographically different than what you're doing in Nevada, but it's also geologically different, right? You're looking for brines versus hard rock. So do you like having these kind of two different types of lithium prospects under one roof, under one ACME roof, or do you envision eventually spinning out maybe your Manitoba assets or spinning out your Nevada assets?
Well, very interesting question, because this has come up recently, and I've gone after what I believe are very good projects that have excellent potential. Right, I really like our projects, and they are different. In fact, in some cases, from a strategic standpoint, the interest that we are developing in these projects, although there's overlap, comes from different parties. We see even offtake potentially down the road coming from different parties. In my view, the Australians, from a pegmatite standpoint, have been involved and active in production and understanding pegmatites. They're the best in the world, and so I think from an interest standpoint, you're seeing a lot of interest in Canada, whether it be Quebec or Ontario or Manitoba, from Australian groups. And so, if we were to look down the road, I think that the joint venturing or partnering or offtake or even getting technical assistance and know-how and knowledge, the Australians would be somebody that we would target and go after. And I've always believed from day one, since I first stepped foot in Manitoba, having Australian expertise there would be helpful. And that's something that we continue to work on. I believe that a consideration that we will have. And really the goal here is how do we create shareholder value? I work for the shareholders. My number one goal here is to create shareholder value. Is how do we do that? And there may be an opportunity here to separate our Canadian assets. We've expanded those and obviously are about to drill. We have considered and there's certainly a possibility that we would separate our U.S. clay and brine assets from our Canadian pegmatite assets into two entities. That could be a spinout where we issue shares in a new co to our shareholders. All those are possibilities. And, it's really a question of, cost. It's a question of timing. It's a question of how if we can develop these projects to a more mature stage. And it also depends on partners. If there's some catalysts that we're coming up in 2023, which I think has the possibility, we would absolutely consider that as something that we would do. I've done it before in other companies, and it's certainly on our radar as something that we would consider.
Okay. Great. So, you continue to expand your lands package in Manitoba over the last year or so. Are you looking at picking up any more ground, or, would you say that your hands are pretty full by now?
We've got one of the largest land packages in and around Tankomine. It's vastly underexplored. We have plenty of work to do with ground we hold. There are some pieces in and around there that we find interesting. There are other juniors there that I've had discussions with about maybe there's a way we can efficiently collaborate, in economies of scale, reducing expenses by working together. There are other ways that we can expand our footprint there. But, frankly, we're very pleased with the land holding we have. We have, as I mentioned, priority 1, priority 2, and priority 3 drill targets. We're not going to be able to complete all the drilling we want to do in a phase 1 program. We have multiple phases that we could do already with what we've identified. So, we've got a lot of work ahead. But I'm always looking for new opportunities, and we continue to evaluate opportunities that make sense to create value, that maybe are undervalued and need some expertise and capital being brought forward to advance them. So we continue to do that as part of our business strategy.
Great. Now, if I'm not mistaken, and please correct me if you've heard otherwise, Steve, but I believe Tanko was actually a blind discovery back in the day, as in its pegmatites that are now currently being mined don't actually outcrop. Now, you conducted quite a bit of work in this area the past summer. So what kind of work did you do exactly, and what have you learned?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because in fact the core discovery that was made at Tanko is actually under a shallow lake, and it did not outcrop. And as many of you, especially if you're Canadian on this call, you may know that that region of Manitoba is very wet. There's a lot of water, especially bogs, and it's uninhabited to a great degree in that region, but there is a lot of water around. So winter drilling makes sense. It's actually, when you get a freeze up, it's actually in so many cases easier to drill in the wintertime, and that's why we're doing it now, or it makes sense to do it now. But in fact, the Tanko mine was underwater, shallow, but it was underwater when it was discovered. We have worked with a geophysics company on some very, very new geophysics technology that in fact is magnetics, and it's using ultra cooled helium, and it actually cools the magnetics so that you get less noise in your readings. And I believe we may be the first or second company to utilize this technology. I'm giving something away here to others.
The secret sauce. I'm writing this down.
Yeah. We are using what I believe maybe one of the first or second company to utilize this technology. We've got some of the information back, a great degree of it, but there is some further processing that we're doing, and we believe that we're seeing some things geophysically and identifying targets that common geophysics wouldn't normally be able to identify. And so I got off the phone with my team yesterday about it, and I'm really excited. The test is going to be in drilling, and sure enough, some of our priority 1, 2, and 3 drill targets actually are in some of those areas where they've been identified through this further processing that we've done with this fairly new technology. So we've taken some risk on that, but I think it's going to pay off. But at the end of the day, we've got to use the drill bit. So we do have pegmatites on surface. The question is I believe that one of the reasons why there hasn't been more discoveries made in Manitoba is because, many of the potential has been underground, shallow, under till, under lichen, under small brush, and we've got to make discovery with the drill bit at the end of the day, and hopefully ACME can do that and continue to do that over time.
Right on. Okay, so yeah, you'll be drilling here at any moment now. It sounds like basically once you get your permits in, which should be very soon. So tell us about the priority 1 targets. Which property are they on? And are they based solely on magnetics, or is it coinciding, call it anomalies with geochemical anomalies, or maybe more geophysical anomalies? Maybe there's some outcrop. Tell us about the P1 targets.
So what I'm going to do, or what we are going to do, is we're just putting together more of a summary of all that information right now, based on some of the new information that we're getting on the geophysics. When I announce, which again I'm hopeful for, when I announce that we've received our permits, we'll be providing an overview of our drill program, the scope of it, the nature of it, and some of those details in an upcoming press release. So I've got to be careful from a forward-looking statement standpoint, but in giving particulars, because that information isn't public yet. But we'll provide that overview in the next couple of weeks in further detail.
Okay, and we can't end this without talking about Fish Lake, of course. There's quite a bit going on there with Ioneer and all these other players, as you mentioned. I know one of these other players, they're not actually looking for claystone, but rather they're looking for brines. So is there any thoughts on the brine potential specifically on your claims, or are you guys focused entirely on the sedimentary resource potential?
Yeah, to our west, there is a brine target that we know somebody is, they're either in the process of mobilizing or they're actually drilling right now. Which is good. It's good for the region. I absolutely wish other companies great success. It's good for our industry and certainly good for advancing Fish Lake. Most of the sampling that we've done have been in and around these benches or trenches, geological features that would hopefully help identify clay targets. If you go out in the playa, call it the playa, the flat salar or the flat lake bed, sampling for brine is challenging. Really, most brine targets are better found in geophysics. We need to do more geophysics on that western edge of our property. We very well could have a brine target. We just haven't done enough geophysics on that side. We've focused more on the region that is kind of a trough that's coming out from the lower foothills, and it really is neighboring Ioneer's project, where we've identified some clay targets. What it really just says to me is there's more work that we need to do, right? And we need to invest time and money and dollars into this region. And it's highly prospective. So I'm not discounting the fact that there may be a brine target, but we've focused on clay mostly to date, partly because that's what Ioneer is discovered, and it's a world-class project. But there's lots of potential here in Fish Lake, and we just need to deploy dollars. I'm hopeful that we'll be in a position with it once we advance Manitoba and Clayton Valley, that we can then put more time and investment into Fish Lake.
So let's talk about, we have a question here on, your institutional investors, and I know you have at least LRC and Warta. Who else do you have, and how do groups like LRC, are they involved with you on the day-to-day, or at least help you out occasionally, whether that's just strategic advisory or anything else, anything beyond the original financing?
Yeah, I mean, they from my knowledge and talking to them, they're a medium to long-term investor. They've been very supportive of what we've been doing. They have been periodically helpful in providing some mainly knowledge of the industry and what's happening with our peer group, or even the majors, or even other technology companies or the auto manufacturers. Their knowledge of the overall industry has been very good from an information standpoint. There are discussions about strategy that we do occasionally have. In fact, I have a call with a couple of those types of investors next week to provide an update. And I'm always willing to learn. I'm a student in this business and continue to be, and will always be. And so, other expertise is something that I love to hear about, and take into consideration. There's some flow-through funds that participated last December, or a flow-through fund participated last December. We raised about $1 million last December of 2021, and then we had further participation from a flow-through perspective this past spring. I do talk to those groups quite often and provide them updates. And in many cases, they've invested more than once. And then we have a couple of smaller funds in Canada that have smaller positions that they've taken. So, we do try to dialogue best we can. It's been a very busy time, frankly, and we'll continue to try to do that. I think, not only do we try to do investor relations, we try to do our best in shareholder relations too, and keeping people abreast of what's happening, good or bad, for that matter.
Great, cool. So with that, we're coming up on an hour here. Is there anything any way you want to end things here? Maybe talk about, what's going to drive the biggest re-rating for you guys in 2023?
Well, a lot of the work that we've done in the last few months has led up to this point, and I think 2023 is going to be a real turning point for us. There's some major milestones that we've achieved in 2021. We've raised a significant amount of capital. We've added projects to ACME Lithium, and we've made a discovery in Clayton Valley, and then we've done good work, preparatory work, whether it be structural mapping or geophysics or geochem, leading up to drilling. And at the end of the day, for investors, I think drilling is where you want to be invested. That's where capital is the game changer. And so we've got 2 drill programs upcoming here. Touch wood, unless there's something that I don't know about. We do expect those to start here very shortly. We're hoping that there aren't any wrenches in the situation, but that's our expectation. We'll keep investors posted. But this is a time where you want to be invested in a commodity and in a junior. My goal here is to expand our discovery in Clayton Valley and get to an initial resource in Clayton Valley. That would be the key milestone I want to achieve, and possibly even a PEA. At some point, that would be my goal here, to collaborate with a DLE company, to sign an official joint venture agreement where we're collaborating with a DLE company. It's something I want to achieve in 2023. And I think that's possible if we can expand this discovery. There's certainly a lot of interest, and we will be sending brine to a number of these companies. So in Clayton Valley, there's some milestones that we absolutely want to achieve. In Manitoba, we want to make discovery with the drill bit in our phase 1 program. If we don't have success, it doesn't mean that phase 2 wouldn't be successful. But you've got to drill and ultimately make a discovery, and then hopefully try to expand that to scale and size. And we'll hopefully continue to invest in Manitoba as we have success. And so my goal here is to make a discovery this winter in Manitoba, which should be a key catalyst for investors. And if we have success in these initiatives, we will continue to attract attention from major miners, from technology companies, from strategics, from capital, and hopefully the retail investment community as well. So, the end of the day, what's under the earth, you can do all the good work. It's, you got to drill, and you don't know what's there until you do. And it's really exciting to be part of this over the next few months.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, hopefully all your hard work in 2022 will pay off. But with that, that's a great place to end it. So Steve, thank you for joining us today. It's always a pleasure hosting you. And to our viewers, if you want to learn our thoughts on ACME as well as other companies that we watch, we do publish all of our research on our website free of charge. And a reminder that our next webinar will take place on December 12th when Tim Lee sits down with Lumina Gold. Again, that's Monday, December 12th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. And now this is my last webinar of 2022. So in addition to thanking our viewers for tuning in, I would also like to wish everyone a happy holidays and a happy new year. And may 2023 be another great year for lithium.